You're listening to Gospel Reign, where the truth, authority, and power of God's Word take center stage. Join Dr. Matt and Dr. Micah as they dive deep into the great doctrines of the Christian faith. Explore how the gospel transforms our world today, and reflect on the stories that shape our walk with Christ. We hope you enjoy this week's episode of Gospel Reign.
Bienvenidos, and welcome back to the Gospel Reign podcast.
That's the first time I've
wouldn't it be
heard
wild if
you
we
say
did
that.
Wouldn't it be wild if we could do a whole podcast in Spanish?
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
I know I couldn't do it.
I'd have to go learn the whole language all over again. And I had probably 3-4 years of that in school, and I still can't remember. I would love to, though.
Well, that's interesting. Immersion in the language be so important. That's why seminary taking Greek and Hebrew, because in that season of life, you're immersed in it every day, learning vocabulary and trying to do that stuff. And so you get it, and then you get out of seminary and you lose Greek and Hebrew almost.
Yeah. Do you remember any Hebrew?
I do.
Don't.
I mean, I couldn't do like what's it called? Parsing down the verb and conjugation. That's it. I couldn't do that.
Don't even know the alphabet anymore. That's how much I lost.
Still pretty good on the alphabet.
Okay.
If I looked at the Hebrew Bible, I could make my way through it. But I couldn't, if I had to take a word out and say, oh, that's a Hithpael, second person plural. I couldn't do that. There's no way. There's no way. Greek, probably so.
Well, maybe I could do some of the Greek still, but yeah. Okay.
But anyways, that is not what
this
free.
is about.
That's free. Enjoy that, I hope, for our listeners. But it's good to be back in the seat. Good to be back talking about theology and Bible and honestly just kind of practical ministry stuff. Yeah. Which brings us to our episode today. I believe the last episode that we released was on the nature of the church. What is the church? And we wanted to take some time, not too generically, but in kind of a big picture of the church and present a number of things, because at the end of that episode we said any one of these things could be its own episode. Right. And so I think if it was appreciated for what it was kind of just a big picture. What is the church? But the more we've talked about this, we wanted to do something as a corollary to that episode that is a very pastoral perspective on an occurrence in the life of pretty much every church that you see membership movement, people leaving the church for one reason or another. And we wanted to spend a little bit of time thinking through what are some good reasons for leaving a church and what are some poor reasons for leaving a church.
Yeah, I bet you could probably get any pastor to talk about this for a
100%.
long time. Not just
100%.
GBC pastors, but a pastor of any church would be willing to probably sit down and give you their list, if they came up with a list of good reasons and bad reasons and neutral reasons or whatever, and just some general frustrations when it comes to this kind of stuff. This is not easy to navigate.
No, and to your point, I think any pastor would probably have maybe an identical list, or at least the majority of this would be similar. Yeah, because it's arising out of the biblical text, just ways in which we see in the New Testament, in particular, reasons why people were sticking in the local body of believers or leaving, in some sense. And then some of this is just experiential wisdom, just walking in ministry for a long time, like you have and I have, and seeing and hearing reasons why people leave the church.
Yeah, because we get all those conversations. Well, we get some of them firsthand, where we have people sit down with us and say, I'm leaving, this is why.
Which is great.
Yeah, and sometimes you get it third hand, where you're finding out and you don't know if it's true. It's kind of gossip. It's gone through multiple hands. And now you don't know really exactly why they're leaving, but you get an idea, you think, and you may or may not be right. So it's hard. It is hard to navigate, but the longer you've been in ministry, the more of those conversations you've had, and we could compile. I got 3 sets of forms of notes here. There's all kinds of thoughts about this stuff that comes from just wisdom over the years, and I think good wisdom. Some of what we may talk about may come across as frustration. But hopefully people will understand and just allow us a little bit of opportunity that we're not we're not preaching from the pulpit here.
Correct.
Allow us a little bit of opportunity to express some of that, which I think will be hopefully helpful.
Well, I think I can speak for both of us when I say it's not coming from a place of frustration.
No,
It
we
is-
just wanted to have a good conversation.
Yeah, some
about it.
reflection on this, and because here the truth is there are going to probably be people listening that have left a church for one reason or another, and some of these may be like, dang, that's why I left.
Yeah,
And that was kind of illegitimate, or
yeah.
I'm glad I did leave because that helps confirm
Yeah.
that we were on the right kind of
Yeah.
track.
And this is
So-
actually a good day for this. If
Mhm.
you caught me on another day, this might be a very frustrating conversation,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
this might be a pretty good day for this.
Yeah,
So-
no, I agree. So I think probably you and I are up on a little time limitation in our kind of schedule today, but maybe to make the most of our time for this episode, let's talk about five and maybe some change, good reasons for leaving a church, and maybe poor reasons for leaving a church.
Okay.
And I asked you before we started recording, what do you think is the kind of number one good reason for leaving a church? You got one?
Yeah.
Kind of at the top?
Major doctrinal or
Mhm.
theological issue or shortfall in the church or from the pulpit.
Yeah.
Something that the pastor or the pastoral team or whatever has done that falls way outside the bounds of orthodoxy.
Mm-hmm.
There, I think, is a very clear and probably quick reason to leave a church and say, I'm out. I don't want to be a part of a church. Now, that doesn't mean there shouldn't be room for questions
Right.
about that issue.
Right.
So, pastor says something that you feel is out of bounds theologically. I would even suggest don't just walk out the door quickly,
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, you need to, if he's going to hold to that, then leave pretty quickly. But there should be room for conversation to sit down with the pastor and say, listen, I have a question. And it's not a accusatory. It's just I need some clarification.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you still don't get any clarification theologically and you feel like it's still out of bounds, then it's time to go. And I just think that's probably the biggest reason why you should leave a church.
Yeah, and I mean, false teaching is clear in the text. That's a problem. Paul addresses it in a lot of his letters to be aware of and resistant of false teaching. But there are some things, to your point, that people may disagree with interpretively.
Yes.
And that may not be a good reason to leave the church. It may be.
Yeah, that's a different issue. Yeah.
But it may not be a good reason to leave the church. I mean, I'm trying to think of an example here. Like if you got up, for example, and you said, my conviction is just that people can be saved and regenerated in the womb of their mothers and born saved. I would say,
yeah,
that's a problem.
Yeah.
And you say to me, well, yeah, but when Mary and Elizabeth came together and John the Baptist was in Elizabeth's womb and Mary's pregnant with Jesus, he leapt for joy in Elizabeth's womb. I've actually heard a pastor say this to me.
Really?
That John was regenerated in Elizabeth's womb because he leapt for joy.
That's interesting.
And I was like, no, sir.
No.
You know?
No.
So that that kind of stuff, yeah, that's definitely worth a conversation.
Yeah,
But
but
if
yeah, I would agree with you. I think if you get that kind of thing, Jesus was not raised from the dead.
Right.
Yeah, I'm out. I'm not staying for that. I'm
Right.
not staying for anything like that. I'm out. But if it's something like the issue, the timing of the second coming or something like that, where it's an interpretive issue that we could agree to disagree on,
Yeah.
I would say be very careful about walking out too quickly. Seek
Agreed.
clarification and then know where we could agree to disagree on secondary and tertiary issues.
Agree.
You just have to be discerning. Sometimes it's not hard. If,
Right.
Again, denial of the resurrection or something, that's not hard. Just bounce.
Yeah.
Go to a different church. Go find a Bible-believing, preaching
Yes.
church. So
Yes.
I think that's reason number one.
And I think there can be those watershed issues where someone has a biblical conviction, and it's not the conviction of the pastoral leadership and preaching, or even the doctrinal basis for the church and the statement of faith. And someone who's a member might have a strong. Well, then instead of creating division in the church, trying to push your theological interpretation on everybody, maybe it'd be healthy for everybody if you left.
Yeah, we probably should have a separate podcast episode about what the leadership of the church ought to do in that case. There may be instances of potential removal of a pastor or something like that if he's off in left field theologically. But I would just say to the normal church member who may not have that kind of leadership capacity or decision-making ability, I'd bounce.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's my number one too. To leave a church would be false teaching, doctrinal error, compromise in some way with the gospel. And even today, if you're preaching a gospel that is essentially like a health and wealth kind of thing, or a social activism gospel, and that just kind of eclipses the biblical gospel preaching, to me, I would see that as some kind of compromise in which at least I would not be comfortable staying in a church if that was the whole message.
Yeah, if that's the only drum you're beating, then you think that there's a lot more to the gospel than the one thing that you're interested in preaching all the time or teaching.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a good reason.
Yeah, that's really, really healthy. What about a second reason comes in my mind? It's kind of related. It's not necessarily doctrinal, but it is a leadership issue. If there is kind of a known unrepentant sin or some kind of sin in the leadership or the pastor that is unaddressed or unreconciled or something, and it's known in the congregation, that's probably a good reason to leave.
Yeah, I think so too, and especially after some investigation that you're able to confirm. I'd be careful to leave based on what you think you've heard.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Again, there's room for conversation to at least go to a pastor and say, "This is what I've heard.
Yeah.
This is what I understand to be true.
Yeah.
I hear it. I've heard it from multiple people or the congregation. Can we have a conversation about that?" And at least investigate for yourself before you make a decision to leave a church.
Yeah.
But it could be that if that issue is true and there is unrepentant sin in a heart of a pastor, he hasn't dealt with something well, he hasn't whatever, and he just continues in that kind of disobedience or an ungodly spirit or something like that, then there's a conversation, and then there's a bigger problem at hand.
And even worse than that is like a moral failure that is admitted to and known, and maybe this is a well-loved pastor, and the church does not walk through biblical principles of church discipline and those kinds of things, and it just like kind of sweeps it under the rug, but everybody knows about it, and it's like, wow, it's not really a big issue. And I'm talking about at the leadership level.
Right.
I think I would be very uncomfortable to stay in a context where sin like that wasn't taken seriously and the Bible wasn't applied to that in a spiritual way.
And unfortunately, you hear stories about that kind of thing happening all the time, where the pastor has had some kind of moral failure, major moral failure, but because of his charisma and his position, the church has allowed it. And a matter of fact, it's almost even been celebrated in some way. And I think that's very unhealthy.
Yeah. And on the plus side of that, you do see churches that kind of walk through some of this stuff and they eventually get to the right thing, and it's maybe their process of trying to work through that. I've heard of churches in New York City and elsewhere where pastors have been some part of some kind of public scandal and moral failure, and they don't really know what to do in the short term, and they get dinged for it as a church. But then they kind of come back to it was like, no, here's what we're gonna do.
There's got to be room for some grace for a church to operate with some pretty hard things like that. I don't know. That's hard, to navigate that, whether or not to be swift in your action on certain things or to process and investigate over time, or the decision making is not easy. It just takes discernment and wisdom. And what I feel like, at least in our conversation right now in this podcast, is what we would warn people against is too quick of a snap decision on pretty much anything.
Agree.
Investigate, listen clear, all those kind of things first, and then make a decision.
Agree.
So
I think that's wise, because sin is serious in it, but but if there is a process that's going on, investigate. I mean, the leadership. How are we dealing? Are we dealing with this? What, because just saying, man, that's terrible, and I'm out of here. Well, you could be short-circuiting yourself from the whole process of reconciliation and biblical forgiveness and repentance and all that stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, I think that's a wise word. What do you think about this one? Because this happens quite a bit. It's happened for a few of our members at GBC who have gone on to other pastures, and that is a clear providential calling to go elsewhere. By that I mean there's a job change to a different city. There's family issue where you've got to go somewhere or whatever. But it's very clear that they're not leaving because they're mad. They're not leaving because they don't like something. But God is moving them, and that's a very good reason to, because our expectation, right, would be we celebrate with you, bless you in this endeavor going, and as soon as is practicable, get invested in a Bible-teaching, gospel-centered, Christ-honoring church wherever you go and however you get there. Well, what would you say to that? Just kind of, it's more than just relocation, but there's a providential move.
God is the one who marks out our steps for us. I mean, we make good plans and we try, and I mean, it's what Proverbs says, right? We make good plans, but God is the one who's going to direct our steps. And so if he's providentially moving us to a different location or a family circumstance or something like you said, then those are clear good reasons to leave a church. But don't, and this is one of the things that we used to say in old church covenants, in smaller churches. And so a lot of small churches still have the old covenant that they put on the wall,
big, framed.
First church I ever pastored had that in the sanctuary. And that big covenant on the wall, one of the things it says is if we leave here, we covenant together, commit that we will bind ourselves again to another church family somewhere else. So
I love that.
We're agreeing that this is important, and that if we have to leave or move because of circumstances, we're going to find another church. So we understand the importance of all that. But yeah, I think providentially God moves us. Now the harder thing is leaving my church to go to the church next door.
Right.
That becomes a little bit of a difficult.
Right. That's a challenge.
That's a challenge but we have people who will come and say, and I always have, and you have too forever in ministry. People say, I just feel like it's God's will that I move on. Okay. There's room for that conversation too, and it could be very well that is exactly what God wants them to do. That is just a little bit harder to untangle sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think some layers to that. It is hard to untangle, but scenarios like if we had somebody come to us and say, I really feel like God is moving my family and me. We're driving 25 miles to get to GBC, and there's a church in our community where we live that's closer, and we feel like we can make a gospel investment there. And we love GBC. We understand the heartbeat and the mission of GBC. And this is a way for us, we feel like we can apply that. That's a very discerning conversation to have, and I think in general we would support that. Go love and serve.
Absolutely. I think
whatever.
Those are healthy conversations to have and healthy decisions to make. And I will say, and you've heard me say this, and I think probably our GBC family's heard me say this, I've said this for many, many, many years in ministry. I'll never beg anybody to stay, and there are reasons for that. But if somebody were to come to me and say, I'm leaving, it doesn't make any difference if it's a staff member, a pastor, a church member. I won't beg anybody to stay. There are conversations that I might want to have about, can you tell me why you're leaving?
Clarify.
But I'm never going to beg anybody to stay, because I know the number one reason for that is I'm not going to get myself in the way between them and a decision that they're trying to make through prayer. When I have not prayed about it, but I'm trusting that they have, and if they sense God's leadership, I don't want to get in the way of that. Yeah. So I'm not going to beg anybody to stay. That doesn't mean I don't want to have conversation about it, but I'm not going to beg.
That's right. And another providential calling could be if, for example, GBC was going to plant a church somewhere, maybe in the Blue Oval area or maybe in New Mexico. That a family would say, yeah, I feel very strongly God's going to move us. Yeah. So they're kind of leaving GBC for GBC to go start a new church and a new work.
Yeah.
And that would be obviously
There are a lot
something
of
we
good
celebrate.
reasons to leave a church, and and when God calls you to go, whatever the circumstances might be, then go. We would say,
but you said something I think is be very careful about dictating what you believe God's will to be.
Yeah.
When you say it's God's will for me to do, you better know it's God's will.
Yeah, that's why
Right?
I just think, and that's why I think if that's the case, if that's one of the things that somebody's struggling with, get good counsel on that. Not just your pastor, but a few friends in the church. Sit down and go, hey, look, I'm really thinking about God. I'm wrestling with something I think God's calling me to do, to leave the church and go somewhere. Can you help me? Can you pray with me for a season on this before I make? Because if it's nothing, again, major theological issue, a disaster going on in the church when it's that might mean you leave quicker. But if you can, invest a season of prayer with some friends or pastoral counsel, I'd say try to do that if you can before you decide to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Because there are good reasons, providentially, that God would move you.
Certainly.
And you just want to be certain.
Yep.
And, that doesn't have to be, to your point, that doesn't have to be detached from the current pastoral leadership over you. You can approach pastoral leadership and say, hey, the Lord's stirring something up. I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Would you pray with me and pray for me and whatever kind of counsel, help me get to the kind of what I think God is doing, because I want to be obedient and I don't want to be disobedient.
Mm-hmm.
That's a conversation you and I would have all day, every day with people.
Absolutely.
And
we do have those conversations.
Yeah.
Okay. I can see on your notes you got this one right here. I want to see. I gotta find out if you what you think about this.
All right. Well, before we get to the fifth one, let's do the fourth one.
Okay.
So we've talked about good reasons to leave the church, false teaching, doctrinal compromise, unrepentant sin in leadership, clear providential calling elsewhere. This one is a kind of a minor one, and then we can move on to the one you want to get at. But if number 4, if there's an absence of what historically has been called the marks of the church, the preaching of the word, the right preaching of the word, the right ordinances, and right church discipline. That, for example, if the diet from the pulpit is more about cultural events and pop culture or whatever, but not a word-driven ministry, that may be a good reason to leave the church.
Agree. And two, if there's no celebration of, you mentioned the ordinances, if there's no celebration of those things, now that could mean a couple of things. It could mean that God has providentially put you there to help kind of give some corrective measures to that. If like the first church I ever pastored, I went and found out when I got there that they haven't had the Lord's Supper in a long time.
Right.
Long time.
Right.
And that's because they didn't have pastoral leadership for a while and all that. It just didn't. Well, you could have been tempted to go, I'm not going there, or I'm leaving because we haven't practiced the Lord's Supper. But it could also mean God's put you there to correct that, to go, hey, can we spark some conversation about needing to do the Lord's Supper again? So it's not necessarily you need to leave immediately. It could be, let's think through this and can we get back to this? So, but yeah, if a church is not celebrating or celebrating it in a way that you don't think is healthy biblically or theologically, in other words, if they're getting 300 or 400 people out in the parking lot and shower them down from a fire truck and calling that baptism, that's I'm out.
Yeah,
I'm out.
Yeah.
So if there's a lack of the ordinances or a practicing of them in ways that wouldn't match Scripture, faithful Scripture, then there are reasons to leave.
Yeah, and gosh, we have all kinds of examples of those crazy things. But to your point, I think that's great. There are opportunities if the ordinances of the church are not frequent and celebrated. There could be something going on there that is worth correcting, worth teaching through, worth calling the church up to in some way. But this is to say, this point here is like if there's an absence of it for some kind of reason, like we're not gonna baptize. Well, why is that? Well, because we're not evangelistic,
Right,
or whatever.
right.
Well, that's a problem, and that betrays a deeper issue that I don't know if I really want to align my life with, which it kind of goes up to some of the doctrinal stuff as well. But practically, when these things are missing, you don't have the right preaching of the word, the ordinances in the life of the church, and as we've talked about before, I think we talked about this in the nature of the church, how we, for example, the frequency of taking the Lord's Supper. There is wisdom in kind of figuring out. Some churches take it every service. Our church family takes it about 6 times a year. Some do it once a quarter, whatever, and different ways to do that. That is different issue than what we're talking about here.
That's right.
This is an abuse or an ignorance
Exactly.
or an aversion to.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah, that is different.
right marks of the church.
Okay, number 5. I
Number
want to get to
5.
this one. All right, number 5.
So a good reason to leave the church would be spiritual starvation after genuine effort.
Okay.
What do I mean by that?
Yeah, I want to see what you
Well,
mean by
because
that.
I have heard this in the past. Well, I'm just not getting fed.
Yeah.
I'm just not getting fed.
That is a
Not
common
getting
one.
fed here.
That's
you
a very common reason that people leave, and I've heard that my whole life.
And y'all at GBC better not ever say that. That's just all I'm going to say. There are legitimate places where you could literally be dying on the vine in a church because you feel like you are spiritually starving. You might be self-feeding, but when you get in the community of the saints, you don't feel like that's adding to or advancing to your discipleship, and you're not growing in knowledge and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think after genuine effort, that is a sense to say, if I feel like I'm not being fed, well, I got to do some evaluation. Am I not paying attention to what's going on? Because, like I've heard
That's
people
a
say,
good
we never talked about X, Y, and Z in the church. Yes, we did.
Yeah.
You just weren't listening.
Right.
Or you weren't there that Sunday, or you weren't a part of the curriculum in the Sunday school or small group life that went through that very thing. So a little bit, I think, I'm not being fed can be a cop-out for something else. But there can be legitimate reasons to leave a church if that you just don't have the spiritual nourishment truly, and you're seeking it, and you're asking questions, and you're trying to lead up. That could be. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think if, as a good reason, there is a negative side to this, and maybe we can get to this in a minute when we talk about poor reasons to leave a church. But I think that is a good reason, although I will say be very careful with that, because you may, if you're going to compare this restaurant and that restaurant, 2 different ways that they both cook filet, one seasons it this way and you don't like that, the other one seasons it this, but it's filet, right? I mean, it's the same thing. You just don't. I don't particularly like the way that's seasoned or this seasoned. I don't like the way he delivers that. I think there can be some. I think can be some conversation around that. How I track with that. Does he communicate in a way that I'm able to pay attention or listen? Does it grab it? Whatever. So there's a lot of things to consider. But if you determine, look, that ain't steak at all, and it's serving nothing. I mean, I'm not getting anything. He's not giving me the Bible. I'm not hearing the gospel. We're not talking about Jesus. We're getting, a list of 5 tips for, this kind of thing, and that's all I'm getting. That you're dying on the vine. There's no real good intentional discipling coming from the pulpit. Then that's a good reason to leave. If you are starving that way, and sometimes that takes evaluation to figure that out. Why am I, like you said, why am I not getting fed? Is it because of what's coming from the pulpit? Or is it because of me? Right. And if it's me, then there's some things I may need to correct. But if I, over a season of evaluating, go, this is not the Bible. I'm not getting nourished in my soul. I'm not, then there's a good reason to leave.
Could be a really good reason to leave. But to your point, not too quickly, do some assessment and walk in some wisdom. I think that's right.
Okay.
I think that's right. All right, some poor reasons.
Oh, we could talk for hours
leave
about this.
the church. Poor.
Hopefully,
reasons.
we've given some good reasons, but we got to kind of balance that. Right? Got to counter that.
Well, okay. I'll ask you the same question I did with the good reasons. Is there one that kind of rises to the top? You're like, that's the worst reason to leave a church.
Issues of preference, and that could be a lot of things. Like, I don't prefer that type of song. I don't prefer that type of tune. I don't prefer, that I don't like his cadence when he preaches. He says some things that are just, he says some things that don't, not that are unbiblical, but just things that, like, I don't think that's funny, or I didn't like the way he talks. I don't like the way, or I don't like the color of the choir robes. It's preference. It's preference. I don't like this. This pew is kind of uncomfortable, and I'm going to find a more comfortable pew at another church, or the color of the carpet. And there's all kind of things, right? They're preferences that I think. None of that. That's kind of our makeup. I mean, all of us have preferences, right? And I'm not knocking them. I'm not just discounting preference altogether. I've got my own preferences, right? But I think if you're leaving simply because of preference, that's a really bad reason to leave a church.
It is, and boy, we could probably do a whole episode on this. The church is an organism that is organic in union with Jesus Christ, a body. That's why that imagery is so important. But so many people, and maybe this is an American Christian problem, but it's like we bring such consumerism into the life of the church. So preference, I mean, the whole rhythm of the rest of our lives are preferential. Where do I want to shop? Where do I want to eat? What clothes? What phone do I want to have? Everything is preferential. And then we come into the church and expect our preferences to be met in that way. And I think that can be really damaging to a person's discipleship, because it reveals a consumerism that honestly is devoid in the way the New Testament talks about the nature of the church and how we grow together as a community of faith.
I heard something from a preacher years ago. It's kind of frustrating. I was young in ministry when I heard this, and I didn't know how to process it. I really didn't. So I assumed he must be right because he was a more seasoned pastor or preacher at the time. He just said, church membership is kind of like the grocery store. If you go to the local Kroger and they don't have what you need, then go somewhere else. You go find you another grocery store. And he said the church membership ought to be the same way. Just, find what you need. Find where they provide everything that you need, and go there. And so I assumed as a young pastor he may be right because he was more seasoned. I think that's horrible advice now, because what that does is it turns church membership and attendance into nothing more than shopping.
Right.
And I'm going to keep shopping until I find the right combination of things that fit my likes and preferences. I just don't think, because, and let me just say, as a pastor, here's why. Let me say it this way: if all a church member intends to do is attend, just be there once in a while for a Sunday service, and they don't become part of the fabric of the church, it's a whole lot easier to leave, and you leave for lesser reasons.
Well said.
You should get embedded and become part of the fabric of the church. That's what a pastor wants. A pastor loves for people to find their place, their plug-in in the church, because they believe in how critical it is for them as a member to become part of the family, a brother and a sister, a body part in that church, part of Jesus's bride, not just an attender. And when you do that, and I'm kind of getting off topic, but when you do that, it will help you get anchored to the church in a very meaningful way. But if you're not, then you're going to approach it very consumer-driven. With a consumer-driven attitude, like, well, that program that they have is not exactly like I would do it, and so I'm going to find it somewhere else. Well, if that's all you're doing, I think that now, as I've gotten older as a pastor, I think that's very poor advice, is just to treat it like your local grocery store.
Yeah, I think you're spot on, actually. I think it's the difference between being a consumer and being a contributor. When you think about the members of the body that the Holy Spirit arranges and gifts, people are just attending. They're not. I mean, it's so Christological, isn't it? Jesus said, "I did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give my life as a ransom for many." There's something Christological for us in our discipleship if we recognize, I could bounce and go to find my preferences, but maybe my calling in this body is to love these brothers and sisters and to serve with the gifts that the Spirit has given me, rather than just going and finding whatever I want.
Yeah, that's
Yep.
That's not an easy thing.
It's not.
I mean, whatever. I know we've all got preferences. Again, I do too. But to boil it all down to preference, I just think is a very poor basis for decision making about your church.
I agree. What about this one? It's related. Secondly, I'm going to leave the church because the church isn't meeting my needs. It's not the same as preference. Preference can take a number of different aspects, but the church isn't meeting my needs.
Yeah, that can be consumer driven too. To think about it, because okay, if somebody were going to come to me as a pastor and say that very thing, I would want to explore what they mean by that.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
Like what is it that you need? Why are those needs not being met? And what I have found over years is that sometimes when that is the reason my needs are not being met, number one, I found the kind of the problem of that is they can't define what their needs are. It boils down to preference. They call it that. They will say my needs are not being met, but they can't define what that means.
Yeah.
And that leads me to think, okay, you're just really leaving because of preference. So definition is an important thing. But when you say my needs are not being met, I would want to explore that with a person to say, let's figure out where you're involved. Where did you jump in with both feet? Where are you serving? And it could be that your needs are not being met because you're not helping meet needs either. You're not jumping in to serve. And if you would jump in to serve and give yourself away, and find that you're becoming part of the fabric of the church, I think those needs, yes, we all have needs that need to be met, and that's part of being a part of the body is that I can benefit from the rest of the body, but I should also be a benefit to the rest of the body too.
I agree. I think of this most tangibly in a lot of churches, for example, as like, well, how come we don't have men's ministry? Good question. You want to lead it?
Yeah. Nope.
You want to start? You want to be the catalyst for getting it? And I think, I mean, because if everybody feels like my needs are not being met, I want to be connected to more men, I want to do this, I want to be active. But if that's not being met, maybe you are God's answer.
That's right.
Who's stirring you up to at least be the instigating catalyst for getting some men's ministry going.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure people are thinking that way. And part of that is that, we have the professional clergy who they should be doing all the stuff, all the ideas, all the leadership. And that's a different subject. But my needs not being met, you're right, can be a consumer-driven kind of thing as well. But we got to get behind, well, what do you mean? Because maybe there is something in the life of the church that you're unaware of or that you're not connected into that could actually satisfy what you're talking about.
Yeah, and there may be other people with that same need, and God put you there to help meet their needs.
Right.
Rather than just looking at your own individual need.
Right.
So, that can be a poor reason to leave. There, again, needs to be some investigation. All right, what about this one? Avoiding church discipline or correction or accountability.
Yeah, that's a poor reason.
A bad reason to leave.
Yeah, that's actually a sinful reason to leave. You're just trying to escape. You're trying to get out from under biblical accountability and those kinds of things, and that probably happens. And I think church discipline, properly defined in Scripture, it has a process to it, and that process assumes that things are going to be dealt with and reconciled prior to someone being kicked out of the church.
That's right.
We don't always just immediately jump to,
right,
you're being disciplined and kicked
you're
out.
Right, and we shouldn't immediately jump to that either. Yeah.
But if someone is not walking in a manner worthy of the gospel, they're not consistent with the covenant kind of standards of our church body, the way that we live together in the gospel, and that's brought to bear on their life, unless I'm out of here. I don't care. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm not going to be held accountable to that.
Yeah, because that's a discounting of the fact that the community of the church is where God is one of the ways God brings sanctification in our life. He uses people around us to hold us accountable, to bring the Word of God to bear in our lives where we may be disobedient.
Yeah.
That's our sanctification process, and you can short circuit that by just checking out and going to a different church where I'm not going to have that problem there. I didn't create a problem at another church. Well, you often find that those who are problem makers and leave when they become a problem often become a problem in another church too.
Might take a little bit of time to unearth, but that's right. In any church that's worth its salt, that's following Scripture and trying to live according to the gospel, they're going to see that, and they're going to go down that pathway. So you're going to jump to another church after that. So
and we just say as pastor, if you're being held accountable by an individual or a group or a pastor or something like that because of something that you've done or disobeyed in some way, just submit yourself to that accountability. As long as it's biblical accountability, submit yourself to that and let God use that as part of your process of sanctification, growing you and shaping you into the image of Christ before you check out too quickly.
Yeah, for sure.
That can be uncomfortable.
It is uncomfortable.
I mean, nobody likes that.
But it requires humility, and it requires the belief in restoration in the gospel.
Correct.
And that's reconciliation, which leads me to the fourth poor reason for leaving the church is just you're in some kind of you've been personally offended, or you're in some kind of personal conflict. Now, let's be clear. Offense and conflict happen.
Yes.
What we do with it is where we kind of put our money where our mouth is, biblically speaking.
Yeah.
And if you're just offended by somebody offends you and you leave a church without working through the body life principles from the Bible about reconciliation and repentance and forgiveness, then you've short-circuited the whole process and you've jumped the gun, And you've been in ministry long enough, Matt, that you know that there are people in churches, they'll sit on the other side of church, never look at each other, never talk. There's something happened years ago, and they were holding this grievance against each other, and nobody wants to take the risk of the first move to apologize and to kind of bridge that gap, and it just persists in this, and the church is languishing under the known irreconcilable differences here. And I think that's a black eye on the gospel.
I do. And some might say, well, what would you rather me do? Would you rather me live with that offense and sit on the other side of the sanctuary, or because I'm offended, leave? Well, I think those are two really bad choices.
Yeah,
those are not the only, not the only choices here.
Right.
There should be a better way, and there is a better way to overcome offense. And if somebody has offended you, this is where I think we are missing something as a church. And I know, because it's natural human impulse. And we all feel it. But when it comes to an offense, if somebody's offended you, we need to learn how to talk to each other. And just go to a brother or a sister and go, this may seem petty to you, but that thing that you did or said or whatever, that really offended. That kind of hurt. And give a person an opportunity to go, look, I'm sorry, I didn't notice it, or I didn't say, or oh yeah, I said it, and I guess I didn't realize I was, being that offensive. Giving an opportunity, at least. I mean, somebody may say, look, I don't care if I offended you. Well, there's a bigger issue there.
There is.
Yeah. And there may become a bigger reason to deal with something,
and there's a process to that. To your point, like I think that the way you said it is so beautiful. You probably didn't mean it this way.
Yeah.
But when you said this, or you probably didn't mean to position yourself again, but I was kind of hurt at that, and it's upset me.
Can I give a pastoral, just kind of a pastoral advice on doing that very thing? This is what I've learned over years. I would say if somebody has offended you, or you think they've offended you, or something has happened that has created some kind of offense in your heart, again, whether it's true or not, doesn't matter. It's better to ask questions than to accuse.
Agree.
So if people would adopt that principle, brother offends me, I should go to that brother and say, I was offended by what you said. Do you remember saying that to me? Did you mean it that way? Would you have taken it the way that I did? That's asking questions. Rather than going and saying, you offended me, can't believe you'd say that to me, and just accuse them, because it could be that they didn't mean that.
Yeah.
And
Or didn't even know they did it.
That's right. Asking questions can even bring our defenses down a little bit and explore rather than accuse. So as good, I think, pastoral wisdom, ask rather than accuse. Ask rather than accuse. And if we would do that when we deal with offense, it'd be a whole lot easier to handle.
Yeah.
And you may still find you've got irreconcilable differences, but don't let that happen because you're making accusations against them. I've had this happen before. I know I'm sounding like I speak from experience, and I am.
Yeah.
But I've had people accuse me of things in the past, come to me and say, you did this, you said that, rather than asking any questions and allowing me to go, wait, but I think you've misunderstood. They didn't give me an opportunity. They just accused, and they were wrong. But because of the accusations, it
can't bridge the gap.
Oh, it can ruin friendships. It can ruin relationships. It can, it burns bridges very quickly. And where that doesn't need to happen, and I think if people would learn to just ask questions first, don't just hold the accusations. Just ask questions and explore a little bit first, but don't let the offense be the reason you just check out.
I agree.
Handle it first. Deal with it. And we're not good at that. We don't want to talk to each other because it's uncomfortable. I don't like that. I want to hold on to my offense and I want to leave.
Yeah.
That's better. It's easier to deal with it that way. Just walk off. I don't ever have to deal with that person ever again. But it's not the right way.
It's not the right way. And I think we got to take a gospel sledgehammer to gossip and slander as well.
Yeah.
Because to go to someone, man, can you believe what Matt said to me? Blah blah blah. They hadn't come to you with this issue of offense or conflict, but they're talking to people in the church about what you said, how it did. And here's the thing: once that toothpaste is out the tube, you can't get it back in. Because even if the offense is reconciled between the two of you, you got all these people that have been spun up, have a prejudice against you now because of what you did and how you offended this person, and all sort of kind of stuff. This is Christianity 300 at least.
That's right.
Like,
that's right.
Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Don't talk. Because that is gossip and it is slander, and it is the playground of the devil to destroy so much in the life of the church. I mean, here's what Jesus would say, Matthew 18, verse 15. If your brother or sister sins against you, go and show them their fault just between the two of you.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't help and there's resistance, then take a couple of other godly people with you and say, hey, we had this conversation. He's not seeing my side or is not willing to see my side, and you all determine where are we missing it.
And instead we end up people, a lot of times in churches where people start choosing up teams, like this. I got these group of people around me because they don't like what you said to me, and now they've got this group of people around them. They're offended, and now they're defending. It just sometimes if we would just one-on-one go to a brother or sister, go, I got some questions. Yeah, I'm not going to accuse you, but I want to find out, and then work through it that way. I think we'd be a whole lot better off.
I do too. We got more. Let's talk about number 5, then we can kind of close the episode with the segment that we like to do in just a minute. But there are others. But what about this one? What about it? Is it a poor reason, or it is a poor reason, to leave a church if you're following a person or following a personality to a different location? All right, for example, like if you quit, if you got up and you resigned, and you go to a church 5 miles from here, for other people to leave the church to follow you to that church, I would say is a poor reason to leave a church.
Yeah, and I think there's probably some ground that has to be laid in order to best answer that question. Can it be a good reason to follow a person? Maybe. 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 I will say, you find evidence in the book of Acts where you do have some following a personality. You don't have the whole issues of, an entire church leaving to go follow Paul when they should have stayed. No, right. Not like that. But you have sometimes people individuals following after Paul or following after Peter, and they travel together, and because it's that person, well, I'm going to go with that person because that person has made an impact in my life, or I want to be on mission. There may be some reasons for that, but I would say as a church, it's kind of revisiting some of what we did in the last podcast with the nature of the church and who the church is. Because of who the church is as a body and as a family, that ought to be very difficult to do. When a pastor leaves, well, 100 of us going to get up and leave because of him. I think we need to be very careful about being personality driven. Very careful with that. And I'm not saying it's always wrong to do. I just think there's a great deal of discernment that needs to come with following a personality.
I think it's interesting, that you're talking about the body in First Corinthians 12. It's like if the left hand says, I'm out of here and I'm going somewhere else, I mean, is the right foot going to say, well, I'm going too?
Right.
I'm done with this body.
That's right.
Just lop me off, and
that's right.
Hand and a foot, we'll just go together.
Yes, right.
It's a dumb analogy, but but that's kind of how it is when people are following a charismatic kind of, I think there is the book of Acts is very helpful as you laid it out, but there's a warning, Paul says in Corinthians as well, that you don't need to have a mentality in which you're saying, well, I'm of Paul, I'm of Apollos, I'm of Cephas.
Correct.
And so if Cephas is out of here, by goodness, I'm leaving too.
Right.
Because the body is the body. The component members make up the body. And
because Paul himself even said, look, who am I?
Right.
Why would anybody follow Paul? I'm not even baptizing y'all. I haven't, I'm a nobody. I'm moving on. And I think that the body life, that term you used earlier, the body life is very important, and that ought to make us not so quickly and not so easily follow a personality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even a pastor.
But like you said, there may be some scenarios in which that could be applicable.
Yeah, could be.
But like one of the pastors receiving a call to plant a church. And some people say, I really resonate with Pastor so and so, and really think it'd be a benefit to a new ministry.
Sure.
Yeah. Something.
There
like
may
that.
be reasons for that, but again, that should take careful discernment.
And what we're really trying to just get at through all of this is that the life of the congregation is a family. We've covenanted together in the gospel to love one another, to worship God together for discipleship and mission, to watch over each other.
Yeah.
And that you can't get that if you're a consumer hopping from church to church, because you're never going to get embedded in the body. And you're not going to be known and know others.
Right. And again, just to give some pastoral application to a couple of these things, or just so that maybe you can see as a listener to the inside of the heart of a pastor a little bit when it comes to this kind of thing. We take this very seriously, that we don't take this lightly, not just because it's a job, but because the writer of Hebrews tells us at the end of Hebrews that we as elders, overseers, will give an account for the souls of the people that are in our care. It's very difficult. I can imagine it's going to be difficult to give an account for the souls of people that aren't part of the fabric of the church, that hop in and hop out, or they're here for a long period of time, but they're not really part of the church. They're not really part of the body. They don't give opportunity for good oversight of the soul. And we will have to, as pastors, we have to give an account to that, to God for that in the end. I don't know what that's going to look like. I really don't. We don't get an indication of exactly what that means. But I want to be, this is why we take it so seriously. It's not just a job. It's an oversight that God has given us that we will have some responsibility to answer for in eternity. And we take great care, and that brings a great gravity to what we do. And let me just say to you, too, when people leave the church, and we have conversations with people that come and go, and that's okay. We have, we'll have occasionally, we have somebody say, we're leaving, going somewhere else. And then that very same Sunday, God's brought us a new family. And so it comes and goes, right? But let me just say, as a pastor, when people leave, we grieve that.
Absolutely.
That's hard. It breaks us I have wept many times over people that have left. Now, I won't beg them to stay. I said that a minute ago, but I grieve it. And there have been times I have prayed with people in my office and just wept as I've prayed, knowing they're leaving, because it hurts so much. Because I've been a part of their life, they've been a part of mine, and however we may have been involved with each other over time, that it's just kind of hard.
Well, and it's almost like you're the last person to find out, and it's like
Sometimes that
a
is
lot
the
of this
case,
could have been staved off months ago if we'd had knowledge and conversation about the things that were bothering you, things that were troubling you, and now it just hits critical mass, and you're like, I've decided I'm done.
Yeah.
And like, well, what? Why didn't we know about this?
Yeah.
And to minister through some of these things and to walk alongside you in some of these things. Now, just all of a sudden, I'm kind of hearing this for the first time, and you're leaving. Like, what?
Yeah.
That's what hurts. And that,
Yeah, and if you're a member of our church or another church, it doesn't make any difference. If you're having some of those kind of issues, go talk to your pastor. If he'll listen to you, go talk to your pastor and take that opportunity, because he will want to hear that too.
Yeah.
Hopefully, he will want to hear that, because he understands the necessity he's going to have to give an account for your soul as well. So don't take that lightly. I hope your pastor doesn't take that lightly either. Let me just say, the family dynamic of a church, brothers and sisters, makes it really, really good, and it also makes it hard. Because when there are issues, that makes it very difficult when you're tearing yourself away to leave your family that you've known so long, you served with. Again, that ought to take we ought to take great care in making those decisions. And then finally, and this will be probably counterintuitive for a lot of pastors, but let me just say this: we want to help you leave well.
Sure.
If for
Truly.
whatever reason God is calling you to leave, if it's a good reason, we want to help you leave well. We want to counsel you and pray with you through the process. We don't want you to. We're not just thumbing our nose at you and like, good riddance most of the time. That's not the case.
Right.
We want to help you leave well, and so let us help you leave well if that's the thing, and let your pastor, if you're a member of another church, at least have a conversation. So anyway, there's a lot about all this. It's hard. It can be frustrating. It can be grieving. It can be grievous. It can be breaking to a pastor's heart. But at the same time, we know God has a plan, and He's building His church, and that's not for me to do. That's for Him to do, and so we move on. So
good stuff, man.
Yeah.
You and I are both wearing boots today.
Yeah.
And these boots were made for walking through the good and the poor reasons
the
to
good
leave
and
a
the bad.
church.
Yeah. So hey, real quick before because I know we got to go. I have a meeting here in a few minutes, and I did make room for that to be a few minutes late. So let me walk through. I've got a list of 10 questions to maybe honestly and prayerfully ask before leaving a church. I don't have time to mention all these, but can I mention just a few?
Sure. Yeah.
So if you're considering leaving a church, these are maybe some helpful questions. Number one, is the issue that I'm dealing with, is it biblical, doctrinal, or relational, or just merely preferential? It takes some discernment. Is it biblical, theological in nature, or is it just a preference? Is it a secondary issue? I need to figure that out first before I leave. Another one, have I clearly communicated my concerns to the appropriate people? Meaning your pastor or another pastor that's over a particular ministry that you're involved with or something like that. Another one, am I reacting emotionally or responding thoughtfully? Get to the bottom of that.
Just asking that question, you're probably going to say, all right, I'm being emotional.
Yeah.
But I like that question. It's a good one.
It helps me at least to say, okay, I got to pause. I need to think through this verse before I make a quick decision. And then maybe let me just make this the last one. Am I expecting perfection from imperfect people? We would all like things to be a certain way, but we have to remind ourselves, and I have to remind myself as a pastor this too, I'm imperfect.
Yeah.
And I'm also leading a church that's imperfect. So there's a point in which we need to at least be honest with ourselves and stop expecting perfection from people that aren't perfect. Pray for them.
Right.
Pray for them. And
have some patience with the progress of the gospel.
Yeah, and don't run so quick. I mean, don't run so quickly from something God's trying to use to bring sanctification in you. It could be that God is allowing you to work through a difficult issue at church so that you are sanctified and shaped.
Right.
Maybe not, but maybe. So it just takes some care and discernment.
I like those questions. I know you got a bunch more. I can see your list there,
more.
but those are really good, helpful to kind of just get behind what's going on, and it takes some evaluation. I think those are good questions. All right, as we close out today, we like to normally do a segment at the end, just a variety of different things we do from time to time. I don't know if we've done this one in a while, but let's talk about a headline.
Okay,
something.
We didn't talk about this beforehand, so
Yeah.
I'm curious to see what headline you got.
Mm-hmm. You got one?
No, I don't. I'm gonna riff.
So
on what
my
you
headline's
got.
going to be our headline?
Yeah.
Okay, here it is, man. This is it. Apparently, this headline came across recently that Trump has dictated to others to release the UFO files. Okay?
You know, I did hear this headline a couple of days ago.
So apparently, this is spun out to the Christian community and some pastors. I looked at the pastor. I didn't know any of them.
Okay.
Ed Stetzer, funny. He posted something. Is like, well, that's an interesting group of
Experts, right?
expert
Pastoral
pastors. Like,
experts.
how come we don't know any of these people? But talking about prepare your congregation for what's coming. Blah blah blah, and just like it's gonna overturn the Bible and all. I mean, just a whole handful of things. And then others are like, okay, if it's true, and we start seeing some documentation of some interdimensional whatever, then probably 99% that's a demon. I got some pastors on all ends of the spectrum commenting on this kind of stuff, but the headline intrigues me. I'd go down this rabbit hole.
Okay.
I would look at everything, every video, every picture they have, and it's a little dangerous because we live in such an AI generated environment.
That's part of the problem is you can't really
Yeah.
tell what's being generated.
Yeah,
artificially
who to trust
or not.
and what to
So,
trust.
Nason, you believe in aliens? No, he says no. Clearly, he's just shaking his head and laughing at us like we're dumb for even talking about this. He says no. Do you believe in aliens in outer space?
No, I don't think I do. I mean, the universe is extremely big. If there is sentient life out there in a different galaxy, we'd never even know it. It wouldn't be possible. You can do a philosophical exercise on the probability of some life out there in a massive universe like ours. But what we have revealed from the Lord is there are powers and principalities in the invisible realm. And I think when we start seeing weird stuff happening, to just conclude that this is an extraterrestrial alien from another planet, I'm not convinced that's the right thing. I do kind of lean toward the spiritual, demonic, even angelic side of things. For whatever reason, we're seeing some kind of manifestation. You see that in the Bible all over the place. I mean, imagine if you were in
that's
Ezekiel
true.
and this thing with all these wheels and
Turning
eyes and
inside
feathers
wheel.
and stuff,
True.
and it'd be a terrifying thing to see. Is that an alien? Well, it would be alien to us, but that's an angel.
So you don't like all these pictures? They're fuzzy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we got pictures of the Loch Ness monster, but we also have the same fuzzy pictures of UFOs that flying around out there.
Yeah, which bothers me because we got such good technology. And the
Great
the
point.
videos that you see is like somebody's like, hold your phone still. It's like, what are you doing? You can't. I mean, it's obvious.
Yes.
You can easily
Yes.
track that thing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And it's like you're darting over to the left and it's out of frame. I'm like,
it's like
I'm glad I'm not the only one who.
I know. Yeah.
I want to see it.
Yes.
So let me see it.
Yeah.
But
That's
I don't know.
hilarious. That's true, though.
Yeah.
That is true.
Yeah.
All the technology we've got, and we can't get anything but a grainy photo
yeah,
of what looks kind of maybe like a UFO or a light blinking, 100 miles away, and we can't tell what it is.
yeah.
I don't know. I'm inclined to agree with you. I
Now,
can't
what
go
if-
there.
what if-
I can't go there.
What if Area 51 and all this other stuff, and they start releasing all this stuff, and we've got actual
green aliens with long arms.
We got actual entities and technology, because that's what I hear more than anything. Someone like Joe Rogan and other people that go down these reverse engineering equipment that we have found to utilize it and or to weaponize it. It's a very interesting conversation. Like in the Venezuela thing, there was some reports that they had this craft of some kind, and they just shot some kind of beam down, and everybody got this massive headache. They were bleeding out of their nose and eyes and stuff. Did you hear about that? It paralyzed everyone.
Did not hear about this.
Yeah, it paralyzed everyone. So, our SEALs go in, and Delta Force or whatever, and everybody's jacked up because whatever technology we used, it was just barely mentioned, and they had a name for the actual craft that we used in that. And so some people are arguing, well, we've gotten that kind of technology by reverse engineering alien technology.
Interesting.
So Trump, he likes headlines and he likes to provoke, and it could be just nothing burger.
I just think I'm reserving all of my thoughts on all that until we have evidence.
Yeah.
I mean, evidence.
Right.
There's all these grainy photos, but to me, that's not evidence. Give me hard evidence.
Yeah.
And then I'll tell you what I think about it.
Yeah, but like Skinwalker Ranch out in Utah, you ever heard of that?
I have heard of that.
I mean, there's just demonic stuff going on out there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's principalities and powers in the heavenly realms, and even if you see an orb floating across the sky, I mean, you don't know what that is.
No.
I don't want to know what that is. But when you have just fear, immediate fear and sense of dread and all that stuff, just think about where that might be coming from.
That's a good point. That's a good.
So
what
anyway,
time is it? Okay, we gotta go. But we could do this for another 30 minutes.
Can you tell we're passionate about?
Because I've got other questions.
Yeah, I am too. But let's see if he delivers on it, and then we'll go.
I'm gonna be watching. I'm gonna be watching.
Yeah, this could be as big as the moon landing for you if it's the right.
Yeah,
if it's the right stuff.
If we have evidence.
Yeah, we'll just.
I need evidence.
But anyways, we love y'all. We really do. Thank you so much for listening to the Gospel Rain podcast and for giving us feedback. Some of y'all give it to us individually. Sometimes you make comments on social, but click and like all the different things that are out there. YouTube and Facebook and.
Hey! In a couple of weeks, we have a very, very special episode.
Yes.
Coming, and I'm gonna leave it there.
Should launch on the 26th of May.
Not gonna tell you what it is.
Yeah, but thank you for teasing it out because it will be. It's a real special episode for us, meaningful.
Yeah.
And so join us again next time for the Gospel Rain podcast.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Gospel Rain. Find us online at germantownbaptist.org/Gospel Rain for more information and a full list of our episodes. We hope you'll join us for another conversation next week on Gospel Rain.